to cope and compromise based on these differences.
The best version of a husband's expectations.
And that's what happens normally in relationships, especially when it comes to men. They tend to force their spouses to become a carbon copy of them.
Like we talked the last time, men are logical, females are emotional.
She's being rude, or she's being bossy, or she's spying on me, or she wants to know what I'm doing, which is none of her business, and so on.
He needs attention. That's why he came back home. Otherwise, guess what? He'll go be with his friends.
There's no point in staying in that marriage because there's always negativity and there's no positive.
The Zawj is one thing. It's a unit that has to contain itself.
But when you say that, you know what? We both wear the pants in the house. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My dear brothers and sisters, welcome to Dome Podcast. And I'm your host, Hatim Abdissalaam. And today my honorable guest is Brother Muhanna bin Saeed Al Harthy, who is an entrepreneur and a consultant. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Muhanna.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you today?
I'm very fine, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. It's always nice to see you.
Pleasure's mine.
And today we're continuing our discussion that we started last time.
Yes.
So today we're talking about relationships and intimacy.
MashaAllah.
I think in the last episode we covered a few points since the beginning of establishing the idea of getting married.
Yes.
But today we want to move on to another grounds where we're talking about anatomy and diversity. One of the things that I remember hearing from my father when I decided to get married is he said that you're a man and she's a woman. Mm-hmm. You come from a family and she comes from a different family. You have been raised in a certain way and they have been raised in a different way. So you have to mind these differences and you have to be able to cope and compromise based on these differences. Brother Muhanna, do people look at the anatomy nowadays when they think of a relationship?
Unfortunately not. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Unfortunately, a lot of people want a spouse who is according to them a makeup of their dreams. Mm. So they think up of a movie star plus an influencer, a model, and they see a good-looking gentleman like yourself on TV. They put that in the mix, and a wife looks, a girl looks, and a husband who looks like that. But unfortunately, sometimes even when you like the looks, they do not think that we come from a different background, like your father mentioned. Mm. They think we should always be the way we expect. And it's either my way or the highway.
Yes.
It doesn't work that way. There should always be an understanding that this person, you did not marry your sister if you wanted somebody from the same household. Or you did not marry yourself.
And even when it comes to your sister and your brothers, you all came from the same parents, but you are all different. Yes. Each one of you has his own unique character.
Unfortunately not. People do not think about their spouses to be a different entity. They want it to be ideally a mix-up of what they imagine in their dreams. Yes. Or they look at models and they look at film actors and good-looking people in the media like yourself, Sheikh Hatim. and a girl would say, I want a husband that looks like this. But those are looks. The character is also different.
The filters on social media, they play a big role.
You reckon?
When you see someone in reality, they're not so good looking, but the filters, they do a lot.
Subhanallah. So the autonomy of a person is in both their character, in both their bringing up. They're coming from a different culture, like your father said. So one wouldn't get married to his sister. Or wouldn't be like a closest person to her. because of the differences in character. Not to a point where they're intimate. He would support her because of sister.
But even when it comes to your spouses, but even when it comes to your siblings, you are very different. For example, we are 6, 4 brothers and 2 sisters, and we are very different from one another.
MashaAllah.
Each one of us has their own character, their own mood, their own attitude, and so on. So I think it's unfair to expect that your spouse would be a carbon copy of you. And that's what happens normally in relationships, especially when it comes to men. They tend to force their spouses to become a carbon copy of them.
I think that's what some of the girls are told. Appease your husband to the point where she loses her character. The point where she's not being the best version of herself. She becomes the best version of her husband's expectations, or mimics him. So up to the point where the husband ends up looking in the mirror when looking at his wife.
They end up even talking the same way, the same tone.
Very true.
Yeah.
But then the kids do not get the best versions of both parents. They end up getting a single version, whatever the father was.
Yeah.
So whether that is the father is good, then that's a flip of coin. They're lucky. If the character is flawed, like all of us, except the Prophet ﷺ, then most definitely they're going to get those flaws.
Yeah.
But accepting diversity in a relation makes the best of both worlds come through, and you help one filter out whatever is negative. Like we talked the last time, men are logical, females are emotional. To flip your wife to become a logical being,
Yes.
you're missing out on the emotion. And if a woman, a strong woman, goes into a relation and turn her husband either into an emotional being, then she's putting him in a pitch of a game that he does not know.
I think the biggest debate here is when the wife tries to change the caveman, who wants a moment of silence when he comes back from work. He doesn't feel like sharing what went wrong during the day, his emotions, his feelings. He's not very good at expressing that. And the husband wanting the wife to stop being emotional, to keep her ideas to herself and her emotions for another day, for another time. So I think these two different matters, they end up in clash because there is no basic understanding of the difference. And this is a lack of knowledge or ignorance from our side, that we don't read about these things, we don't educate ourselves about these things, we just get into the marriage blindly.
I agree with you. So it's a passed on ignorance, because when you say I don't want to do what the parents did, what they did was do it on the basis of what they saw from their parents. We love our grandparents, but we don't want to be like them in our marriages because we are different. Everybody is in hyper individual nowadays. I have a different way of getting married, a different way of raising my kids, a different way of living, up to the point where they just do it by their whim, hawa. But so if you're not going to follow somebody in your family or what you see around you, read about it, like you said. But doing it out of just pure ignorance ends up in catastrophic results. So when we talk about not reading about it, we have to be doing everything, especially have to do with our religion, out of knowledge.
Yes.
لن تعبد الله حتى تحسن الورع. You won't be able to worship Allah until you are fearful and pious. ولن ترى ورعا بالجهل مجتمعا. You never see piety that is combined with ignorance. أمانة الله تستطيع الأداء لها. You can only fulfill what you have been given to safekeep by Allah. إن علمت مفروضا ومجتمعا إن علمت مفروضا وممتنعا إن علمت مفروضا وممتنعا. So if you know what has been ordained to you and what you've been forbidden from, including marriage, because we talked that people marry ala sunnatullah wa rasuluh.
Yes.
People marry in the masjid. People marry in accordance with Allah, what Allah has ordained. However, that
and it's an unwritten contract. It's a divine contract with Allah.
Absolutely, and heavy covenants are and promises are made in front of hundreds of people, typically. But post that point, which is where we are today, people don't follow that. They go by their whim.
One of the issues also is the language of coding between couples.
Yes.
Couples don't tend to understand the phrases despite the number of years they live in together, and this is also again back to the idea of lack of knowledge. So I give you an example. When a man is out of the house, whether he's busy at work or with friends or doing any other activities, and you get a message or a call from your wife saying, "Where are you?" Normally the reaction is to be insulted, and as if your manhood is questioned. Yeah, why should I'm not a kid? I'm responsible of the household. Why should she ask me where am I? But in reality, what the woman means when she asks you where are you is she's concerned about you, and she misses you, and she wants you to be with her at home. That's as simple as it is.
Or maybe she's nearby and she needs you for something.
Yes, it can be anything. But the assumption that goes into your mind is that she's being rude, or she's being bossy, or she's spying on me, or she wants to know what I'm doing, which is none of her business, and so on. And the other way around is when the husband comes back from work, he's very tired, he's had a long day, maybe a bad day with his boss, and he looks depressed somehow, and the wife says, "What's wrong with you?" And he says, "Nothing." And then the wife thinks that, no, he's hiding something. He's up to something.
Yes.
Or he doesn't love me because he doesn't trust to share what is in his heart.
Subhanallah.
So the language of coding, I think it's very important for people to understand, to be able to live a very comfortable life. And so many times, the best thing is to ask your spouse, "What did you mean by this?" And you will get the proper clarification instead of assuming this is what it means.
The language of coding is important, and it comes with time. The institution of marriage is been there as long as humans have been. So it has evolved until it reached us in the form that Islam has ordained.
Yes.
And there's a lot of facts of culture that come into play.
Yes.
And sometimes you find a cross-cultural couple having a language problem or language barrier, at least initially. However, when they're from the same culture, the problem is intent, niyyah. One says something meaning something else. It's either from their upbringing or their family, and they bring it along with them.
Yes.
So when the wife is wise, she will ask, because if she follows her emotion, shaitan will come and say, because a man would say things like, "I saw, I heard." It's based on facts.
Yes.
She would come up with, "I think,
I feel."
and "I feel." These are not absolute facts, and therefore they could be interpreted.
And it's not a shortfall.
No,
it's
not.
just
it's just the way they were built.
The way you were built, the way you're wired, the way you're designed and created by Allah. That's how you are.
So all I ask of the youth or the newlyweds or the people who are together, the spouses of one another, is to, did you mean 1, 2, 3? Or I understood 1, 2, and 3. At least initially, until there's consistency. When he says this, he means that. When he says the same words when he's upset, he means this. When he says he doesn't want to talk now. But maybe if I sit next to him, say nothing, he will open up.
Yes.
He doesn't want to talk, I go away, I go clean up the kitchen, or I go busy on my phone. He needs attention. That's why he came back home. Otherwise, guess what? He'll go be with his friends.
Yeah.
And sometimes these changes, especially in a man's behavior, should be monitored. Because if he always comes home and he suddenly goes to his friends,
there is a red flag.
There's a red flag.
Yeah.
An amber flag, at least. You have to attend to it as a wise woman. Remember, hunna libasun lakum, antum libasun lahun. We cover one another's shortfalls.
Yes.
And that should be a key thing in our marriages, where he no one's perfect. Like we said, we're all flawed. Therefore, the woman should be there to cover your flaws. You should be there to cover flaws, not necessarily by augmenting them, but telling you, did you think of it this way? Because she does the thinking bit, the feeling bit. You take facts and you just reflect them on you.
Yes.
The excuse, you kept on talking about coming from work tired. It's a normal consequence. It's a normal consequence. You come back from work tired. You should leave whatever comes from work in terms of tiredness at work. If there's a personal effect of it, then that should be dealt with. That way you don't bring it back consistently, because it's a continuous process. What ought to happen is that language of coding and the maturity of communication should be one of the milestones. One of the milestones is that I'm having less misunderstandings with my wife.
Yes.
After 6 months, after a year, after 2 years, I looked at her, she understood what I wanted. I said something that had nothing to do with the issue, but she knew exactly what I wanted with that. Men will come back and say, what is this smell? A woman would say, okay, my house is smelly. Be very specific as a man. There is something's burning. Mashallah, it's a nice smell. Being specific.
Elaborate more.
Absolutely. Making sure you give praise when it's due, or when even it's not due.
Because that is a requirement. That is a need.
Absolutely.
For the woman.
It's a need that it has to be fulfilled, whether by you as a husband, whether when she goes to her parents, when she go visits, by her siblings, or a colleague at work.
Of achievement for that son or daughter in front of their parents, that they have succeeded in their marriage. So when you go to the in-laws and say, oh, mashallah, your daughter is wonderful, you've raised a very good daughter, she's a very good wife, she takes care of the house and so on, I think it boosts the confidence in the wife or the husband, and it helps the relationship, it helps the love to grow bigger in that relationship and so on. So these small things in our eyes, they are actually big in our spouse's perception.
Most
so we have to continue doing them more often.
A man being logical, he takes the care and love from his wife for granted. She accepted to marry me, leave her parents,
yes,
and come to my house.
Yes.
That's a huge tick in our box. We wake up with that every day. She wants to be assured as soon as she wakes up, I love you today. So that care is what she's looking for, because she was getting that from her parents.
Yes.
Or even if she was missing it from the parents, she wants that in the husband. How are you today? Because you care, you ask about it. You sound different. Are you okay? Your throat. You check on her during the day at work. You check on her when you're leaving work. That care is what cushions when there is a confrontation. God forbid. There are some things that has to be dealt with a confrontation in a very subtle manner, in a manner that takes into consideration the fragility of our wives and spouses. That's what Prophet said, رفقا بالقوارير. So when we take that into consideration, when the confrontation, God forbid, comes and anything needs to be dealt with that way, they remember all those praises. He just said he loved me an hour ago. He was holding my hand. So show that you care. Show that you are her sakina, her serenity, her peace, the place of comfort. As soon as you do that, the tough times which appear in every marriage become easier to swallow.
Yes. And they don't drag for longer.
Absolutely, because they know they're coming from a good place.
Yes.
And they're given significance. If you confront every day on everything, and there are no praises, there's no care, there is no consideration of how they feel.
There's no point in staying in that marriage because there's always negativity and there's no positivity.
Well, they are told it's going to be tough.
Yes.
You have to sacrifice.
Yeah, definitely.
It's going to be very challenging.
I think, Brother Muhanna, we're going to continue our discussion after a short break. So stay tuned. Dear brothers and sisters, welcome back to Dome Podcast with me, Hatim Al Abdissalaam, and my honorable guest, Brother Muhanna bin Saeed Al Harthy. Welcome back, Brother Muhanna.
Thank you.
And there is a very popular concept in relationship, which is don't confront and care front. What do we mean by this?
We mean do not, like I said, show that you care, because when relations is about confrontation, when there is a breakdown, when there is a rift, as a man you should own the blame. It's my fault.
Which is a difficult thing to do.
Absolutely.
For a man.
That's why ليس الشديد بالسرعة.
Yes.
The one who's good, who's super, is not the one who
who rages when he's angry. Yeah.
Absolutely, but is the one who controls his anger.
Yeah.
When he's enraged, and by doing that, you do not shift the blame on them. They feel that I'm not being attacked, because as soon as you pick on anything tiny in the house, that's her kingdom, that's her realm. So as soon as you talk about this, you just wipe dust on top of the desk, khalas, you've triggered something that's very negative. So you go like, no. You don't do that, number one. That's the care you show. You always go the extra mile. Make sure you praise well above whatever's been provided, because you really should appreciate it that way.
Yeah.
You always make sure that the wife's trying to provide the best she can to her husband and family.
Yes.
Sometimes, like we said, we're all flawed. Sometimes there are shortcomings. You do not bring those up. You overlook. You make sure that you showed the care. So I'm saying you care front, because that's what's important. How about you also care about her feelings, even when there is a quarrel. Even when, because like you said, there's no use of staying in a relation if it's all about bickering. She said, no, I don't want to be part of this, especially with today's mentality, unfortunately.
Which is
autonomy well above or well beyond where it should be. The autonomy shouldn't be with a spouse. That's what Allah Ta'ala says. وَخَلَقْنَا لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا. It's not like an English word. A couple is a combination of two people.
Yes.
It's a new entity being created. So there's no I in an Islamic couple. A zawj is one thing. It's a unit that has to contain itself.
So it's not two parties. Yeah.
It's not. It's a unit.
Yeah.
So
it complements one another.
Absolutely. But why I'm calling it a unit, so it's seen as one. It's not you and her. It's us that fuses into one another, scaling from expectations that we talked about in the last episode, coming into caring.
But as you know, Brother Muhanna, now things that are changing, both men and women are in the workforce. both of them are contributing to the household, both of them are taking care of the kids together. So the assumption is we are equal in responsibilities and duties and rights and everything else. And that's the norm now, where some of the feminist movements, they're asking for equality and so on. But anatomy is totally ignored, and also the basis of responsibility based on Islamic rulings is also ignored. And that's when people go wrong and they start falling into arguments and disputes. But it's always advisable to go back to the basics, which is anatomy and your faith, because our faith regulates our behavior, and anatomy is the fact.
Yes.
You can't change. You see documentaries now where university professors are asked, what is a woman? And they don't have an answer. They don't have a definition for a woman, which is something very simple. Even if you ask kids in kindergarten, what's a woman, they can describe to you what is a woman.
True.
Because the anatomy is very clear, and that's how God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has created it. There's no dispute in that. There's no change. There's not. There's no any more interpretations that you can have.
But how did we get there? Do you think it's a combination of our sisters, mothers, and daughters wanting to take more responsibility than they should have, and also us allowing it, or it's just a
I can't seem to understand it in a way, because why would you want to lose privileges?
Subhanallah.
I give you example. If we go to the market to buy groceries, okay, we come back home, the car trunk is open, okay, who goes and carries the heavy stuff?
The man.
Yeah, the man. Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to let go of the privilege that you just walk into the house, have your tea while your husband carries the boxes and puts them in the house? Why would you want to lose the privilege when someone intrudes into your house? The first thing the woman does says, get up, go and check. Mm-hmm. Go and risk your life for the safety of your family. You can even get killed, you trying to protect your family. Why would the woman want to be in that position?
SubhanAllah.
Why would the woman want to be in a position where she's competing with the husband to pay for the bills and everything else? If she's willing to do it out of her own goodwill, that, I love my husband, I think he's having a difficult time, I'm gonna chip in just to help him because I love him, because we're one family, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you say that, we both wear the pants in the house, you have a say and I have a say, we're both the boss in the house, we're equal.
And that the results of such a thought are catastrophic. We see it in a lot of bad examples around us. However, I also think there's one more very important element that results in this, is what we talked about in the last episode, rights. Many girls get into it not knowing what their rights are. So if she knows that the husband has to be the provider of her shelter, food, and clothing.
And security.
Shelter includes security.
Yes.
But these are the three things that and guarding her from all harm are part of the oaths he takes. If she knows that this is his responsibility, if she's just, she wouldn't overburden him, and she'd know she's welcome to compliment, because, like I said, that's her kingdom, that's her realm. She can do whatever she wants inside the house, but the basics are on him, according to what he can. If she wants anything well above that, then she's welcome to contribute, but that's not obligatory on her. Once she knows that, probably she would come back and say, okay, let's come to terms and agreement. But if she's going into it and being told by other like-minded women, no, because you're giving him 50%, then you have equal rights of going out whenever you want, if he's out, of making decisions at the same level. But you are going to make logical decisions while you're an emotional being. and he's going to be deprived from doing so. And he cannot care for an equal. Usually you show care for a person that you feel needs you. Otherwise you're just being nice.
Yes.
You get me? When you're peers, you're just being nice to one another. But Allah Ta'ala says, الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض. So we've been given the rights of kinship. So they are our next of kin, because we are given some advantages of physical strength, like we talked about, the logical thinking bit, and if we go back to the basics, we are the ones who have to earn and give those rights. So therefore, looking at these three basic points, the balance is created by knowing that I am with this man. I'm not an equal to this man. So he's not a foe, but he is my husband. He is my solace. He is my supporter. He is my guard. By definition from Allah, if he doesn't do any of these, he is not doing it. So I need to assist him to get back to the track so he can earn the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yes, indeed. And I think one of the things that also is important in a relationship is the idea of extra mile. The idea of extra mile is to do something that is least expected from you. Something that is not an obligation, you don't have to do, but you do it. For example, you find your spouse or your wife having a long day with the kids, she's struggling and so on. One of the weekends, just tell her, why don't you have the day for you? I'll take care of the kids. I'm going to do everything in the house. I'm going to cook lunch, for example. There's nothing wrong with that. And the wife did not expect that, but you're doing it out of goodwill. You are investing in that relationship. Yeah, buy her something that she did not expect.
True.
Say something nice that she did not expect in a very odd, timing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, those surprises, they play a very big role in
rejuvenating, keeping the spark going.
Yeah, and you can be as creative as possible. You can do so many things, and this is not only from the man's side. I think it's also from the wife's side. She also plays a big role in making this marriage a total success. Now, Brother Muhanna, why is it important to have milestones in a marriage? Or should a marriage be just constant, and as we say in Arabic, تعيش على البركة, you leave it to the blessings of Allah?
Some people say constant, some others say boring. And that's the danger of it. It needs to be consistent, but not constant. Therefore, you set milestones. You set a milestone where I have been daily doing this to my wife.
Yes.
And it's that milestone that you talked about. So it doesn't become a once in a blue moon event. But you say, every day I've been waking up next to her and I'm smiling. And it's been 30 years. That's a milestone. You say, we haven't had a quarrel for the past month. And suddenly that month's become 10 years of no quarrels. We haven't slept upset with one another, ever. That's a very important milestone. Because...
And celebrate it, and talk about
absolutely.
it.
I'm saying it's a milestone because that's what milestones... each time a team achieves a milestone. If you notice, the way we structured this is very, very close to a change management structure.
Yes.
So milestones are important because you celebrate, because I've achieved this. You set the flag there. You get me?
Yes.
You say, we've achieved this together. Thank you for being there. And then you do the extra mile. You know which cake or which pastry she likes from a place that's a bit far. You still go get it. You get me? Yeah. She expects a rose. It becomes a dinner, and then she gets a rose. That sort of thing where you say, you look at where you were. You say, Alhamdulillah, we're here today. It's a different position, in a nice position. By the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but because of you, my wife.
Yes.
You are able to get me here. Thank you. Guess what? The kids see that and they start setting their milestones and growing on those. So you've set the bare minimum of how your son will treat his wife, and the bare minimum of how your daughter is going to be treated or accept to be treated by her husband.
Indeed. One of the things that is important in a relationship, Brother Muhanna, is establishing rules. I go back to the idea of assumptions. Yeah, you have your own set of rules, your wife has her own set of rules. When we don't communicate these rules to one another, yeah, and we assume that the other party would know these rules, and then we blame them when the rules are being broken, it becomes unfair.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So no matter how painful it is to accept rules, yeah, here you need to at least compromise. Each one of you will compromise on these rules, but at the end of the day, they are clear, crystal clear. They're not vague.
True.
They're not based on assumptions or feelings. Yeah. What else can we say about rules? How do we start opening this topic of rules to our spouses?
I urge every couple I speak to, which is about to get married, and even ones who did get married but did not talk about it, to seriously set rules from day one.
Yes.
It's a new title, a new role you're playing. So tomorrow, if you're given a job and you're not given your responsibilities broken down, you have no way to measure were you successful or not in delivering those. So I ask them, as soon as they are alone with their wives, they pray 2 rak'ahs together with everything, a man pronouncing vocally from the tawjih all the way to salam. They do a dua, and then he goes, my wife, now you're my wife. You were my fiancée before this, but now I need to, we spoke about this, but I'm just re-clarifying. This is what this is your rights from me. This is what your obligation toward me. And this is how I expect our life together to be. If we are to get kids, this is how I expect them to be raised. This is how our families are going to be treated. And this is how we hope to become the best neighbors possible around us. By setting out your private relation rules, by setting how the relations of the immediate family, because that's how a Muslim marriage is, by setting the relation how you're going to be in the community, puts a lot of comfort in not having missed expectations. Before they consummate, I ask them to do this. But for those who didn't, there's always time to go back to the drawing board and say, this is where we are. Maybe this is the shortfall they had a problem with. Because there's no assumptions, like you said. Everybody knows what's expected. Is it going to be rigid? No. Because we know we're getting into this. We also preempted the results. We get married to get kids. When those come, I know that my wife is going to. I told her that I accept you going to your parents' house for the period of 40 days. I accept you to be your family to be around it.
Yes.
Why shield her from such a privilege? You get me?
Yes.
Some of our expatriates, brother in the country, they wish their wives' mothers are around, but they don't have that privilege. We have it, and some of them say, no, I want my kids to be in my house. I will take care of them. You cannot. They are roles you've never played before.
And sometimes you have to be logical. When men stop their wives from going to their parents' house, and they don't have any reason, they don't have any solid reason. It's just because, you know what? They repeat the same statement, الرجال قوامون على النساء, because I said so. Yeah, and I think that is not right.
الرجال قوامون على النساء, Sheikh Hatim,
yeah.
Sorry for interrupting you, is taklif, not tashrif.
Yes.
So we're not honored by that.
But do men understand that?
They have to. and it's our role to give that guidance to all our brothers, all our youngsters, all our kids, all our nephews, nieces, because this is what will set the compass straight. This will tell them this is the true north. I was given a responsibility, not an honor.
This is one of the misconceptions, Brother Muhanna. There's another misconception which is happening in so many Muslim societies, is when the man takes hold of the income of the wife. So let's say the wife is working and she earns, so the bank card stays with the man, and then he dedicates like 5% portion from her income
To her expenses.
Yeah, so this is a reality that happens. And then you have other category of husbands where the wife is a housewife and you expect her to do everything for you and for your kids, but you don't even give her an allowance to take care of herself. You want her to look like a queen, but you don't sponsor her look like a queen.
Sure.
To look like a queen.
Certainly.
So I think this misconception is that as long as I can feed her and she has a shelter, that's good enough for her. She doesn't need anything more. We're treating her like one of our employees.
Our religion is a religion of balance. So we're not in either extreme where we don't give her anything, or we give her everything to a point where she
takes half of your money.
No, it's okay to take majority of it if she needs it, but because we talked about being emotional, there'll be often impulsive shopping here. So typically, if you get a shopping list, you will stick to it as a man.
Yes.
If the wife goes shopping, you get a lot of things that were never planned for. But the extremes I was talking about is, I don't give her an allowance.
But that goes to the idea of the rules again, yeah.
Oh, I take her card.
Because
most definitely.
Because Muhanna, if you tell your wife, listen, every month, I'm gonna give you an allowance of 200 riyals. It's up to her what she does with the 200 riyals.
Most definitely.
Yeah. We don't have a say on that because it belongs to her now.
Yes.
So she knows that she will never exceed the 200 riyals because that's what I have.
Yes.
Once she exceeds, then that's a different story. But when you don't give her anything at all, and then expect her to be perfect and do everything in the house, and while she doesn't have to do everything in the house, she's doing it out of her own good, she gets a reward for that. So then I think there's a lack of understanding here.
So what you're saying is true, but the two extremes I was talking about is the ones you said as an example. I either take her card and I give her 5% of her own earning, or she's not an earning one and I don't give her income. Our religion is a religion of balance. She knows her rights, so therefore whatever she decides to contribute are the extras, and it can be done according to her liking. If she's not earning, then I need to support her. I need to support her to look good. She might have been supporting somebody when she was in her parents' house. She wants to do sadaqah. She wants to buy you a gift. She won't be able to surprise you. So
if she's not earning.
If she's not earning. Yeah. But if you give her that stipend, she might save it. And you might be either getting it by her looking elegant for you, by her going to a salon to look better for you, to take care of herself for you. And so you're even depriving yourself of that comfort, which will result in intimacy, which is the bit we're going to talk about next.
Yes, I think we're heading to deep waters. So let us take a short break and then we come back and talk about intimacy.
Thank you.
Dear brothers and sisters, welcome back to Dome Podcast with me, your host Hatim Al Abdissalaam, and joining me is my brother Muhanna bin Saeed Al Harthy. Welcome back, Muhanna. Now we're going to touch about something very sensitive, which is intimacy. Hanna, is intimacy important in a marriage relationship?
It's absolutely crucial, and it's a physical representation of the care and love we talk about. So it's not enough to tell a person you love them. I'm talking about the wife, of course. I'm talking about people in general. But the hugs, the kisses, consummating that is epitome of telling a person you love them.
Now, going back to anatomy, there should be a clear understanding to distinguish between the needs of a man and the needs of a woman. Maybe in the early stages of life, the needs of a man and a woman are equal, yeah? Or maybe for women, even they're greater than the need of a man for sexuality. But as they grow older, this formula is like reversed, and women become more subtle. They need it less, but the urge for a man increases, and even they call the midlife crisis.
Yes.
Yeah. So the idea of bringing up this topic with your spouse, it's quite embarrassing, quite sensitive, and most of the time the argument is from the women's side is, you men, this is the only thing that you think of. Yeah.
Yes.
And when it comes to the man, he is like, well, I got married for intimacy. This is one of the most important things.
Absolutely.
In marriage is intimacy. So how do we come to middle ground when it comes to this, Brother Muhanna?
I'm not sure if it's scientifically proven, or it's just what is burdening a lot of women. But the change in the midlife crisis is usually with very closely aged couples, or a woman who is elder. But the curves, as far as my reading and research, they overlap, and it depends on genes, on health and activity when the curve for a woman drops. So up to very close to menopause, sometimes it's at 50, mid-50s, some of them go into menopause at 60. They're very active. The desire changes because by the time she's what we call midlife crisis, 35 to 40,
Yes.
she's busy with her 4 kids and her job, and you've been a grumpy man, so you put her off. But the physical requirements are always there. And like we talked about, the cuddles, the hugs, the kisses, they lead to it.
I just want to interrupt you
Yes.
in two things. You mentioned about age.
Yes.
When the age is too close, or
Yes.
the woman is older than a man. I read somewhere, I'm not so sure how authentic it is, that Sayyidina Ali said, if you're going to choose a spouse, she should be half your age plus 7.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, that is like the right age for you to choose a woman in that age range. And at the same time, the complaint from the women's side is that when it comes to intimacy, for men, it's like food. You eat, you wash your plate, and you're done. But for women, it's a process. Yeah, it starts with good words, it starts with cuddling, holding hands, kisses, and so on, which leads eventually to intimacy. So the older the man grows, he is too, in a rush. He's in a rush to get it done out of the way, because it's a burning urge. For the woman, no. We have reached to a stage where we can control our desires, and we should take our own time. We should take the gradual steps. And this is where the dispute happens.
It's not a dispute, because we have authentic narrations that we should send a mirsal. We should go for foreplay. The Prophet ﷺ, and the authentic relations from our mother Aisha on some details of how she was being kissed. So the Prophet asks us not to do it like animals do it. Go, اقضي وطرك, finish whatever you need to finish and leave, because those curves again needs to be matched. There's science behind it, and today that information is available through our phones of how the reaction to any stimulation is what's the curve for a man and what's the curve for a woman, and both should be accommodated. When you do that, number one, longevity is there.
Yes.
Of years. Number two, it becomes a pleasurable activity for both. The moment you think that other one is not an option, so it's not an argument anymore. Coming to it like a camel does.
Yes.
You get me?
Yes.
So there's always a mood to be set, and those milestones we talked about should be always complemented here. The extra mile you go should always be coming here. The anatomy, and taking consideration of that, because some men go like, yeah, but I married you fit. You get me?
Yes.
Yeah, but I'm sure when you got married, Sheikh Hatim, your beard wasn't white.
You don't want to know.
but
I was 40 kilograms lighter.
So that's what happens with time.
Yeah.
But the sexual attractiveness is, like I said, it's a physical combination of that love. It's you seeing her as the prettiest woman ever, in any condition she's in, because she is your halal. She is the one who's been with you when you were less than perfect and you got together to where you are right now. She is the mother of your kids. She's the one who suffered in her body to bring you to make you the father. And that's where these extra relations affect. So if you, I can't. It's difficult for me to be intimate with a person who insulted me. You get me?
Yes.
So you need to set the mood, carefront, to be able to go to a person and hug her. Go to a person and you get me? Have physical interaction with, in a manner that you're sure that there's nothing but love inside of them.
But initiation should be from both sides. It shouldn't be from one side only, isn't it?
Yes, and
because it's a relationship at the end, and if only one part puts the effort, and the other part doesn't put effort, then it might fail at the end.
Guess what? It's a nature of a good woman to be shy. Al-Haya. And remember, the only description of the woman that Sayyidina Musa gave 8 to 10 years of his life to was Ja'atu bistihya.
Yes.
So she wouldn't be very overt like we do.
Yeah.
A man can go hold her hand and just pull her away from a group of with her children. We're like, okay, time to sleep, girl.
Yeah.
A woman wouldn't do that. She'll be more subtle. That's where the language of coding, as you called it, needs to play. You get me?
Yes.
You'd see her telling you, how about we go to sleep early today? That's her way of telling you that. We go like, no, I want to finish the match. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. This is
Manchester United is playing.
yeah, that's recorded.
Yeah.
This is your wajib. This is her right from you.
Yeah.
And that's where you should consider that. That's haqq. And it's pleasurable compared to seeing 22 men pushing around a ball.
Yeah, indeed. I want to talk about medical issues when it comes to sexuality and how it affects the marriage. I think the intimate or the intimacy part to a man is so important because it's one of the pillars of him being a man.
Sure.
And when he is insulted in that area, then it breaks him as a man.
Sure.
So when a man feels that he cannot provide for his family, he is like he's in debts, he cannot afford to provide for his family, he breaks down. And at the same time, when he fails to perform, that's like a no. That's a big thing in the man's world.
Definitely.
So how can the wife support, or even the other way around, if the issue is with the wife, how can they support each other through these difficult moments?
Like we said, هن لباس لكم وأنتم لباس لهن. They are clothing, they are covering to you. You have exposed each other to one another, but therefore, if it's an obligation. Sexual satisfaction is an obligation. If a man or a woman feels that they have medical difficulties, there are two types. Some are transient, that can be treated. Some can be treated. And for those, they should seek medical advice. And that should be done very, very soon, because it could affect their longevity and being together. Some are inherent. They can't. A woman is either a thalassemia or a sickle cell patient, or any of the hereditary diseases that she came with. As long as the husband was told about it, his expectations should have been set. But these are the limitations of such a person, and I should accept them. And it's one of the compromises that men have to do. Of course, we come to the very controversial issue, unfortunately, of a second and a third wife. But men should either resort to that if they can't wait and they can handle being just, because Allah Ta'ala says, وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا فَوَاحِدَةً.
Yes.
So, and Allah Ta'ala says, وَلَنْ تَعْدِلُوا. You will not be just. So therefore you're going to be living in a limbo. But medical advice is highly recommended, because science today has a lot of ways of dealing with these matters.
Before we conclude our last point for today, in intimacy, I want to talk about a habit that I wouldn't say all men, but a few men have, is that they like to discuss their heroic episodes of their bedroom, the intimacy in the bedroom with their friends. So when they're in the coffee shop or with friends, they laugh about it, they talk about the details of intimacy with their spouse. What can we advise these brothers?
A'udhu billah. That's the worst thing a man can do, because if whoever you're speaking to does not get any of that, he'll be desiring yours. The second bit is that shouldn't be only be about intimacy. You should keep your marriage to yourself. If he's a good friend, he'd see it in your face that you're happy.
Yes.
He'd see in your face that you are thankful. You'd mention your wife every now and then, because she's half of you.
Yes.
So the day he doesn't hear you mention any of it, he should be concerned. Is everything okay at home? But no details should be shared, because you do not know how is his marriage. Or maybe he's not married, and he can be envious of you.
Yeah.
But especially the intimate bits should never be discussed. There's another mistake a lot of young couples do, is talk about their heroic haram endeavors before marriage.
Yes.
That is something that can break a marriage. And if one, astaghfirullah al-azim, a'udhu billah, falls into adultery, he should never admit to it, because that makes the wife, it nullifies the marriage. So these are very, very important bits.
And this is a word of advice to sisters, because when you get into a marriage, you're opening a new page with a man. I think it's not beneficial to anybody to dig into the past. I'm sure a lot of men and women at a particular stage in their life, they've gone through ups and downs in terms of their faith and their behavior. They have done maybe crazy stuff. And I don't see the point where you have already reached stability, you have a family, you have a spouse who loves you, you are devoted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then you need to bring up the past, to talk about the past. You know, what were you before being a husband or a wife?
True.
And that seems to be an issue, which I don't seem to understand, but it is important to some spouses to know your past. But I think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has concealed your shortfalls, so you shouldn't be telling everybody what you were like before getting married.
Absolutely. And just to touch on that point beforehand, the before is important. So before marriage, I was a person who goes on hiking trips every weekend. Now I'm a married man. That should reflect in my behavior.
Yes.
I should put my family first, even if it's just my wife first, because that will reflect when we have children.
Yes.
I'm used to travel with the boys every month or every 3 months. That was your past.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about general information that is about your past.
Not about talking about it. I'm talking about behaving like you're still unmarried. You just have another person attached to you.
Yes.
And you leave them like you were before. So you find a lot of estranged wives. Does your wife work in the desert? No. Does he work far away? No. He's just away every weekend with the boys. Every evening he goes to a shisha place.
Yeah.
So she is an estranged wife while the husband is living in the house. And that's a problem. So the before is important, knowing this is how I was before. I'm getting married, I'm going to a new phase of life. I have an extra responsibility. I have a person who is attached to me that needs my attention.
Brother Muhanna, now that we have spoken about the beginning, the middle, and now we're coming to the end, what is the result anticipated from everything that we have discussed during the 2 episodes?
The choice of the wife and the expectation management of this is how I want the marriage to be, knowing their rights, knowing your responsibilities, knowing how much you're allowed to compromise, knowing that you need to be selfish. So if you are happy, you can give, you can reflect that. Al-mu'minu mir'ata akhi. So you are reflecting that happiness because you were selfish enough not to compromise up to a point you are sad.
Yes.
Knowing that there are milestones, knowing that you need to care and not confront. So you need to care, not confront, but care front. And having these rules that govern this marriage results in a happy house, results in peace. And in the Islamic jurisprudence is called fiqhul ma'alat. You know I'm doing 1 and 2, the result is 3. And knowing that I'm being a just husband, I'm fulfilling my rights, I've chosen the right mother for my children, which is the first obligation of a man towards his kids. I have set her family and their importance like I want her to treat my family and their importance. This is how we're going to be in the community. This is good, so I will encourage her to do it. This is bad, or even a shubha, and I'll help her or persuade her to go away from it. All this results in a peaceful house. This results in what Allah wanted. لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. And we should always anticipate that if that's not done right, but you've done whatever you're obliged, you have respected the family, the unfortunate, and it's halal, but it's the worst of halals, which is divorce. That separation happens how a man took the oath. أو تسريح بإحسان. However, if no obligations were met, if no expectations were set, the man did not go the extra milestone. He wasn't a good person. He wasn't the best version of himself in that marriage. The family was not respected on both sides. They were bad neighbors. There's no intimacy. The result is absolutely going to be a catastrophic divorce, ending up clogging up the courts like we hear. And it was announced last week, I think, we have 10 divorce cases per day.
Subhanallah.
So these are the results we're talking about. The ma'alat, the results of bad deeds is bad results.
I want to end with the story of the companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam who went asking for a divorce. She asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that she wants to be divorced from her husband, and when he asked why, she said, "He is the best man if I am not with him." I want to stop at this and contemplate the respect between the spouses when they disagree. And unfortunately, when people get divorced or decide that we no longer fit for one another, first of all, it doesn't mean that any one of them is evil.
Absolutely.
It just means only that they are not compatible, and maybe they can look for a better compatibility with someone else.
Absolutely.
And when the divorce happens, and especially when you have kids in the middle, don't bring your disputes into your kids' life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, don't go around talking about your husband or your wife and the shortfalls they had when they were with you, because they entrusted you to keep whatever happened between you, and now you're out of that circle of relationship, which is marriage. You don't have the right to go and expose one another in public, telling people or shaming and faming your ex-spouse about things. They might be true, they might be not true. But it's not out of the moral and the conduct of a Muslim to go and do this. And this is becoming very popular now. They even, manipulate their kids that you shouldn't see your father, you shouldn't see your mother is an evil person, your father is the worst human being, you shouldn't... and then the kids, they grow up with hate towards one of their parents, which is something that I feel is very wrong. With this, I leave the last few words to you, Muhanna, before we wrap up today's session.
Jazakallah khair. Like we said at the beginning, be together for the right reasons. Be together for the pleasure of Allah. Be together because the Prophet said, تَنَاكَحُوا تَكَاثَرُوا فَإِنِّي مُبَاهٍ بِكُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Be just to your spouse. Know what's her rights and provide it. Know what's his right and do it to the best of your ability. Communicate openly, especially in the controversial issues. Respect one another and one another's families. Make sure you are the best versions of yourself. Make sure you do not sleep on anything that is hidden in the heart. Make sure you try and consummate that love you say you have for one another physically. So be as sexually active as possible, because that was set there for a reason. It releases a lot of stress. Be a couple that is a nucleus for this community of Islam to grow. And if, God forbid, it comes to divorce, do it in a manner that helps the man and the oath he took in the masjid, saying, وَتَسْرِيحٌ بِإِحْسَانٍ. Jazakallah khair, Shaykh Hatim.
Thank you very much, Brother Muhanna bin Saeed Al Harthy, for being with us, and I hope, inshallah, our listeners and viewers have benefited from today's session and the last session as well. Take care, everyone. From me, Hatim Al Abdissalaam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.